The doctor slipped me a secret note that read, "Don't go home. Run." That night, I discovered my own family was planning to have me committed to a nursing home to steal everything I had, but what they didn't know was that I had a secret that would change their lives forever. My name is Margaret Collins, and I'm 70 years old. I've lived in Florida my whole life, a retired nurse, a widow, and a mother who once believed that love could outlast anything. For 45 years, I thought I understood my family. I was wrong. I drove home from Dr. Reed's office with my heart pounding like a drum trapped in a small cage. The Florida sun poured through the windshield, bright and merciless, but I couldn't feel its warmth. All I could feel was the folded piece of paper in my purse, that quiet warning that hummed louder than the traffic around me. When I pulled into the driveway, everything looked the same. The hibiscus bushes were blooming. The American flag, Daniel insisted on hanging, fluttered gently in the breeze. But something about the house felt different, hollow, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. I walked in. Rebecca's perfume hit me first, sweet, artificial, too heavy for a Tuesday morning. Daniel and Lily were in the living room, whispering. The moment they saw me, they went silent. "Hey, Mom," Daniel said, flashing that polite, paper-thin smile I used to believe was love. "How was your appointment?" "Good," I lied. "Dr. Reed says I'm in perfect health." Rebecca looked at him, almost disappointed. Her eyes flickered with something dark, frustration, maybe even anger. She held a stack of papers that she quickly tucked behind her back. I pretended not to notice. Lily smiled at me, but it wasn't the smile of the little girl who used to braid my hair and call me her best friend. It was stiff, rehearsed. "Glad to hear that, Grandma," she said. "That means you've got plenty of time left." Plenty of time left. The words sounded kind, but they echoed in my head like a threat wrapped in sugar. Dinner that night was quiet, too quiet. The kind of silence that makes the sound of clinking forks feel like gunfire. Daniel barely spoke. Rebecca chewed mechanically, eyes distant. Lily scrolled through her phone, pretending not to see me staring at her. "Is something wrong?" I finally asked. Daniel looked up, startled, as if I had caught him stealing something. "No, Mom. Everything's fine. We're just tired." He smiled again, but it never reached his eyes. I nodded, forcing a smile of my own. Inside, a storm was forming. I could feel it, that strange heaviness that comes when the truth hides too long in a room. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan, listening to its slow, circular rhythm. Each turn whispered a thought I didn't want to face. What if the doctor was right? What if the danger wasn't illness, but the people I loved most? The note burned in my mind like a secret flame. I could almost hear Dr. Reed's voice again. Family isn't always what it seems. At 2 a.m, I heard voices, soft at first, then clearer. They were in the kitchen. I got up, careful not to make the old floorboards creak, and crept to the hallway. The moonlight spilled across the tile floor, cold and silver, like the light in a crime scene photograph. I stopped near the kitchen door, and that's when I heard Rebecca's voice, sharp, impatient. "The doctor wouldn't do it. He said she's perfectly fine." Daniel's voice came next, calm, practical, cruel. "Then we'll find another doctor, someone who'll sign whatever we need." My breath caught. I pressed my back against the wall, willing myself to disappear. "But what if she figures it out?" Rebecca whispered. "She's getting suspicious." Daniel sighed. "Relax. She trusts me completely. She always has." Lily's voice, soft but cold as glass, joined them. "I just hope this doesn't take forever." "I already got accepted to college, Dad. I need that money now, not in 5 years when she dies." 5 years. They were calculating my death like a tax return. Rebecca scoffed. "Don't worry, sweetheart. If she doesn't cooperate, we'll make her lose her mind for real, switch her medications, move things around, make her doubt herself. It'll take a few weeks, and then any doctor will sign off on it. Daniel laughed, not loudly, but enough to make my heart crack in half. That's brilliant. We'll get power of attorney, sell the house, and finally have the life we deserve. The life they deserved? My knees trembled. I bit my knuckle to stop from crying out. 45 years of sacrifice, every overtime shift, every night I stayed awake when Daniel was sick. All of it, just currency to them. Rebecca's voice again, almost playful now. I married you for a future, Daniel, not for babysitting your senile mother forever. They laughed. The three of them laughed at me, my own family, the son I raised, the girl I loved like my own blood. Their laughter felt like knives scraping the inside of my chest. I stumbled back down the hall, every step heavier than the last. When I reached my bedroom, I closed the door quietly, sat on the edge of my bed, and stared at my shaking hands. Dr. Reed had been right. I shouldn't have come home. I pressed my palms together, trying to steady my breath, and whispered into the darkness. God, what have I done to deserve this? No answer. Just the steady hum of the air conditioner and the quiet ticking of the clock, counting down the seconds until morning. I realized then that I couldn't trust anyone in this house. Not the man I called my son, not the woman who married him, and not even the granddaughter whose laughter used to be the light of my world. The people I loved most were plotting to erase me, and by morning, I knew I couldn't stay another night under that roof. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there staring at the ceiling fan turning in slow, hypnotic circles, the blade slicing through the silence like slow seconds of a countdown. Every sound in the house felt wrong. The refrigerator hum, the pipes creaking, even the rustle of the palm trees outside my window. It was as if the walls were whispering the truth I was too afraid to say out loud. When morning came, I moved carefully, quietly, like an intruder in my own home. The hallway was filled with that faint scent of coffee and burnt toast, Rebecca's doing. She loved the smell more than the taste. I walked into the kitchen pretending nothing had happened, pretending I hadn't heard my own family plotting my disappearance just a few hours earlier. Daniel was at the table reading the newspaper like everything was normal. Rebecca was washing dishes that were already clean. Lily scrolled through her phone, earbuds in, her world far away from mine. Morning, Daniel said. His tone was too cheerful. Too smooth. It was the same voice he used when he used to lie about skipping class as a teenager. Morning, I replied. I didn't hear you come to bed last night. He glanced up for a second, then back at his paper. Yeah, I was working late on some accounts, you know how it is. Rebecca didn't look at me. She was humming softly, a tune I didn't recognize, but the rhythm of it made my stomach twist. I smiled, poured myself coffee, and sat across from them. If they were pretending, then so was I. The performance had begun, and I was suddenly playing a role in my own life, the harmless, aging woman they thought they could outsmart. I took a sip of coffee and said, I might go visit the library today, maybe stop by the church. Father James has been asking about me. Rebecca froze for half a second, so small most people wouldn't notice, but I did. She was calculating, always was. That's lovely, she said, forcing a smile. Maybe you could pick up some of those cinnamon rolls you like on the way back? I nodded, returned her smile, and pretended to take the bait. But inside, I was making plans. When they all left for the day, I finally exhaled. The silence of the house was different now. It wasn't empty. It was alive, charged, listening. I moved from room to room, my fingers brushing against furniture I'd chosen decades ago. The oak table Robert built, the china cabinet from our wedding, the photographs that once meant safety. Now they felt like evidence in a crime scene. I went into Daniel's office. my son's so-called workspace. He had changed the lock last year, claiming important business papers, but I knew his rhythms, his habits. There was always a spare key somewhere, because Daniel had inherited my forgetfulness and my tendency to hide things in plain sight. I found the key taped beneath the second drawer of the hallway console. My hands trembled as I turned the lock and stepped inside. The room smelled like ink, paper, and deceit. Stacks of folders lined the desk. Property documents, bank statements, insurance forms. My name was on several of them, but not as owner, as dependent. I flipped through the pages, my heart beat louder with every line. They'd already filed preliminary forms for guardianship. The plan wasn't just to send me away. They wanted control over every penny I had. Tears blurred the words. I wiped them quickly. I couldn't afford weakness now. On Daniel's desk, next to his computer, sat a family photo, all of us at the beach. Me, smiling, Rebecca, pretending, Daniel holding Lily on his shoulders, and behind us, the waves rolling in, relentless, indifferent. I stared at that photo until the image burned behind my eyelids. That's when I realized they had already taken me out of their future. I just hadn't been buried yet. At noon, I heard their car pulling back into the driveway. I quickly closed the door, put the key back, and hurried to the kitchen. I was cutting fruit when they walked in, pretending to be the same harmless woman they thought I was. "Hey, Mom," Daniel said, setting his briefcase down. "You all right?" "Yes," I said softly. "Just thought I'd make us something light for lunch." He smiled. That same smile. Practiced, pleasant, poisonous. Rebecca leaned against the counter. "Oh, before I forget, Dr. Reed called. He said he wants to schedule a follow-up next week." My chest tightened. They had spoken to him again. "Oh," I asked. "Did he say why?" She shrugged. "Something about updating your file." My file. A piece of paper that could decide whether I was free or locked away. I forced a small laugh. Well, I suppose doctors love paperwork. Daniel chuckled. "Don't worry, Mom. We'll help you handle everything. You don't have to stress about a thing." His words were smooth, but his eyes said something else. Possession. I smiled back and said, "You're right, honey. I trust you." And the moment I said it, I wanted to vomit. That night, I packed a small bag, just in case. Passport, cash, my will, and the note from Dr. Reed. I folded it carefully and slipped it into my pocket. Then I sat by the window, watching the streetlights flicker across the palm trees. It was a quiet neighborhood, the kind that looks safe until you learned what people did behind their closed doors. As the clock neared midnight, I whispered to the darkness, "You taught me everything, Robert. Even how to survive when love becomes a weapon." I didn't know what my next move would be, but I knew I couldn't wait for them to make theirs first. So when morning came, I'd start digging into the past, because I had one card left to play, a secret even Daniel didn't know about. And that secret was my salvation. I didn't sleep. The night stretched long and heavy, a sheet of darkness pressing down on me. Somewhere between the hum of the ceiling fan and the whisper of wind against the window pane, I remembered a voice from years ago, my husband Robert's, low and steady. "If anything ever happens to me, Maggie, there's a folder in the lockbox. Don't forget it." I never opened that box, not once in 20 years, because back then I didn't need secrets. I had a family. But now, secrets were all I had left. At dawn, I got out of bed. My hands felt colder than the morning air. I went to the closet and reached for the small lockbox tucked beneath a stack of old quilts, the ones Robert used to say smelled like home. It was still there, untouched, the key taped to the bottom of my jewelry case. When the lock clicked open, I swear the sound was louder than thunder. Inside lay a thin leather folder, a few yellowing papers, and a letter in Robert's handwriting. The smell of paper and memory filled the room. I unfolded the letter carefully. The ink had faded, but the words were clear, as if he'd written them yesterday. My dearest Maggie, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and I trust you more than anyone left in this world. I've set up a trust in your name and in Daniel's, but only you have full access. He'll never know until you decide it's time. Don't tell him where it is. Protect it, and protect yourself. Below it were documents, legal, notarized, detailing accounts and properties I never knew existed. A bank in Naples, 2 rental homes, investments. Altogether, over $2 million. I felt my knees weaken. Robert had left me a lifeline, and I had buried it with my grief. I whispered his name, Robert, and felt a tear roll down my cheek. Then I looked toward the hallway, toward the place where Daniel's laughter used to echo when he was a child. How could a boy who once brought me wildflowers now conspire to destroy me? By the time the sun fully rose, I was no longer the same woman. Something inside me had shifted, a quiet, steady flame replacing the fear. If my family wanted to play a game, I'd play better. I took out a notebook and began to plan. Step 1, gather proof. Step 2, move the funds before they could touch them. Step 3, disappear long enough to make them believe I was helpless. Then, strike back. But first, I needed to leave that house alive. At breakfast, Daniel was his usual self, kind on the surface, sharp beneath. Morning, Mom. How'd you sleep? Peacefully, I lied, stirring my tea. I dreamed about your father. Rebecca looked up. Really? Yes, I said, meeting her eyes. He told me something I'd forgotten, something important. She smiled, tight-lipped. Dreams are just dreams, Margaret. I smiled back. Not always. I excused myself early, saying I had errands, the grocery store, the church, the library. Daniel didn't question it. He never believed old women could outsmart him. I walked straight to the bank. The air conditioning hit me like a cold wave, sharp and clean. The teller, a young woman with kind eyes, smiled politely. How can I help you today, ma'am? I need to access an old account, I said. Margaret L. Collins. It should be under Naples Trust Holdings. She typed for a moment, then her expression shifted. Yes, Mrs. Collins, I see it here. Do you have your ID? I handed it over. My hands barely trembled. After a moment, she nodded. Everything matches. Would you like to make a withdrawal? Yes, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. $5,000 in cash. She hesitated, then smiled, coming right up. As she counted the bills, I felt something inside me settle. Not peace exactly, but control. Paper could be weapon or shield, depending on who held it. And for the first time in months, I was holding my own fate. I tucked the money deep into my purse, along with Robert's documents and his letter. That afternoon, I checked into a small seaside motel an hour away, the kind that smelled faintly of salt and cleaning spray. The clerk didn't ask questions. I paid in cash, signed with my middle name, and took the key. Room 12, a single bed, a lamp with a crooked shade, and a window that faced the ocean. I closed the door behind me and locked it twice. Then I sat on the bed, the envelope still in my lap, and exhaled for what felt like the first time in days. Outside, waves crashed against the shore. Soft, rhythmic, like a heartbeat reminding me I was still here, still fighting. I pulled out my phone and opened the voice memo app. The recording from that night. Their voices. Their plan. I replayed a few seconds, enough to hear Daniel say, "We'll find another doctor. Someone who'll sign whatever we need." I stopped it, then pressed save and renamed the file Proof-1. Then I called a number I hadn't dialed in years. Graham Mitchell, our family attorney. He had been Robert's friend, a man who still believed in integrity and handshakes. "Mrs. Collins?" he answered, his voice warm and steady. "It's been a while." "Yes, Graham," I said softly, "and I need your help." Urgently. He must have heard the fear beneath my words because his tone changed instantly. "What happened?" I told him everything. The note, the whispers, the documents, the trust. The silence on the line stretched before he finally said, "You did the right thing calling me. I can protect you, but you have to trust me now." "I do," I said, and for the first time in days, I meant it. "Good," he replied. "Come by my office tomorrow morning. Don't tell anyone. Bring the papers, the note, and any evidence you have. We'll build a case before they can touch anything." A case. The word felt powerful, like the first brick in a wall between me and the people who wanted to destroy me. That night I stood by the window, watching the waves shimmer under the moonlight. The ocean looked endless, just like the love I'd once given freely. But even the ocean has tides, and mine was turning. "You always said to be strong, Robert," I whispered. "Well, I'm done being afraid. Tomorrow I would stop being their victim. Tomorrow I would become the storm." I arrived at Graham Mitchell's office early, before the sun had fully burned the mist off the Sarasota Bay. The city was still waking up, and for the first time in weeks I felt like I was waking up with it. The building was old, red brick, ivy crawling up the corners, and a small bronze plaque that read, "Law Offices of Graham Mitchell, since 1982. When I stepped inside, the scent of leather and old books filled the air. It reminded me of Robert, of all the times he'd told me, if you ever find yourself in trouble, find a man who still believes in paper trails. Graham stood as soon as he saw me, tall, silver-haired, still carrying the calm of someone who'd seen everything and stopped being shocked long ago. "Margaret," he said gently, shaking my hand, "you look like you've seen a ghost." "I've seen something worse," I replied. "The faces of the people I thought I could trust." He gestured to a chair. "Sit. Tell me everything from the beginning." So I did. I told him about Dr. Reed, about the note, the whispers, the recordings, the forged papers, and the night I realized my family wanted me gone. I showed him the trust documents, the bank slips, Robert's letter, all of it. He listened in silence, the way good lawyers and good priests do. When I finished, he leaned back, exhaled slowly, and said, "You're right to be scared, but you're also right to fight." Then he opened a yellow legal pad and began writing. "Here's what we're going to do," he said, his voice steady as a judge's gavel. "Step 1, secure everything." He helped me move the remaining funds into a separate account under a new trust, one only I could access. He explained the process in calm, measured tones, like a surgeon describing how to remove a tumor. Step 2, gather proof. He connected me with a private investigator named Elena Vega, a former police detective with a reputation for getting things done quietly. "She doesn't talk," he said. "She watches." Step 3, document everything, every word, every visit, every attempt they make to manipulate you. "Build a wall of truth," he said, brick by brick. I nodded, writing every instruction down in my notebook, the same notebook where I used to record Robert's medication doses. Now it would hold my own cure. Elena met me that afternoon in a small cafe near the marina. She wore sunglasses even indoors and spoke like someone who measured every syllable. "Your son and his wife, they've already been moving money around," she said after reviewing the copies I gave her. "Small transfers. Preparations. They're getting ready to take control." I felt a chill crawl up my spine. How long before they try something official? Soon, she said. Maybe weeks, maybe days. People like that don't wait long once they smell blood. I stirred my tea, the spoon trembling slightly. Then we make sure they taste regret instead. She smiled, not warmly, but approvingly. Good. I'll start by getting copies of the medical forms they tried to file. We'll need the doctor's testimony, too. That evening, I called Dr. Reed from the motel. When he answered, his voice was low, cautious. Margaret, thank God. I was worried you didn't make it out. I made it, I said softly, and I'm not running anymore. He sighed in relief. I kept copies of everything. The request forms your son and daughter-in-law brought me, their signatures, even the timestamps. I knew it was wrong. Can you send them to my attorney, Graham Mitchell? Already did, he replied. And Margaret, I'm sorry. I wish I'd warned you sooner. You did, I whispered. You saved my life. When I hung up, I realized how strange gratitude feels when you've been living in fear. It's sharp, like sunlight after a storm. The next day, Graham called with an update. We have enough to open an investigation, he said, but you can't go home yet. They'll be watching you. I know, I said, and I have no intention of walking back into their trap. He paused. Margaret, I have to ask, what do you want? Justice, protection, or revenge? I looked out the motel window at the pale horizon. Justice, I said, then, after a moment, and maybe a little peace. He smiled faintly through the phone, then let's get both. Elena and I began working quietly. She installed a small camera in my mailbox, tracked Rebecca's calls, even placed a microphone in the car Daniel used. Every day, new fragments of truth came in, proof of what they'd been doing for months. They'd already changed my will, filed papers claiming I was mentally unfit, and worst of all, they had forged a medical statement with a fake signature from Dr. Reed. When Graham showed me the copies, my hands shook with fury. How could they do this? I whispered. Because they think you're weak, he said calmly. But they've forgotten. You have something they don't. What's that? He smiled. Patience. Let's talk. That night, I sat by the motel window again, staring at the ocean. I could almost see Robert's reflection in the glass, calm, wise, waiting. You always said to trust paper, I murmured. Well, now, it's going to bury them. My phone buzzed, a text from Elena. They're meeting tomorrow, your house, 8 p.m., talking about final papers. My pulse quickened. Tomorrow, they would plan their final move, and I would be ready. I opened my notebook, drew a line beneath the day's notes, and wrote in careful, steady letters. Phase 4. Let them think they've won. Then I closed the book, turned off the light, and whispered to the darkness. Tomorrow, the game ends. The ocean was restless that day. Waves crashed against the shore like fists, and the wind carried the kind of silence that only comes before a storm. I'd been watching the clock since dawn. Every minute brought me closer to the moment they'd finally reveal themselves. The moment I'd stop being prey and start being proof. Elena had set up everything. Tiny cameras disguised as photo frames, a microphone hidden in the dining room lamp, and a small GPS tracker in my handbag. Go back, she told me. Act normal. Let them talk. Let them believe they've already won. I agreed, though my heart felt like glass about to crack. That morning, I looked at myself in the mirror, at the lines time had carved into my face, at the quiet strength in my eyes. I whispered, You're not a victim, Margaret. You're the storm. Then I drove home. The house looked the same, but I wasn't. I stepped through the door, the Florida sunlight spilling across the tiles, and smiled as if nothing had happened. Rebecca was in the kitchen, pretending to make tea. Daniel stood by the window, phone in hand. Lily sat on the couch, scrolling through her screen like she hadn't helped plan her grandmother's disappearance. Mom, Daniel said, all false brightness, We didn't expect you back so soon." "I missed my garden," I said softly. "Thought I'd water the hibiscus." Rebecca turned, her smile tight. "You look rested." "I am," I replied. "It's amazing what peace can do." They exchanged glances. I caught it, that tiny flicker of unease, the kind of look people give each other when the plan starts to wobble. Dinner that evening felt like theater. Rebecca served chicken and rice, but no one ate much. Daniel kept clearing his throat. Lily stared at her plate. I played my part perfectly, gentle, forgetful, grateful. "Mom," Daniel said finally, "we wanted to talk to you about something." "Of course," I said, setting down my fork. "What is it?" He took a breath. "You've seemed confused lately. We just think it might be best to get you some help, a place where you'll be safe, comfortable." I tilted my head, pretending to consider it. "A nursing home, you mean?" Rebecca jumped in. "It's not like that. It's just temporary, until we sort out your finances." "My finances?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. I didn't realize they were unsorted. "Mom," Daniel said, his voice tight, "we've already spoken to Dr. Reed. He agrees you've been under a lot of stress." "Oh," I said, smiling faintly. "That's funny." I spoke to him too. They froze. "He told me you paid him a visit," I continued. "Asked him to sign papers saying I was losing my mind." Rebecca's face went pale. Daniel's mouth opened, but no words came out. I leaned back, calm, deliberate. "Would you like to know what else he told me?" Silence, the kind that cuts deeper than shouting. I reached into my purse and placed my phone on the table. With one tap, their voices filled the room, the recording from that night in the kitchen. "If she doesn't cooperate, we'll make her lose her mind for real. We'll find another doctor. I need that money now, not in 5 years when she dies." Lily gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Rebecca stood, trembling. You recorded us?" Daniel slammed his hand on the table. "How dare you invade our privacy?" I laughed, quietly, bitterly. "Privacy? You planned to steal my life. I think the invasion began with you." They shouted over each other, excuses, lies, rehearsed lines collapsing in real time. But I just sat there, letting the chaos unravel, every word, every confession, every threat, all of it captured by the tiny camera hidden in the lamp above us. Finally, Daniel snapped. "You think anyone will believe you?" "You're old, Mom. Confused. That's what the papers say. That's what everyone will say." I looked him in the eye, calm as still water. "Not everyone," I said. "My lawyer will believe me. And the police. They already have the evidence." His face drained of color. "What?" I smiled. "Elena Vega, former detective. She's been recording everything for weeks, and by now Graham has the files." Rebecca sank into her chair, whispering, "No, this can't be happening." "It is," I said softly. "You could have had love. You chose greed." Lily began to cry. For a second, I almost pitied her. Almost. Daniel's voice cracked with fury. "You'll regret this, Mom." "No," I said, standing slowly. "I regret raising a son who forgot what love looks like." I walked out before he could answer. Behind me, the sound of Rebecca sobbing mixed with the sharp scrape of Daniel's chair. Outside, the night air smelled like rain and freedom. From my car, I texted Elena one word: "Done." Then I drove back to the motel, every mile between me and that house feeling lighter, freer. When I arrived, Graham called. "It's over, Margaret," he said. "The police have everything. The recordings, the forged documents, even the bank transfers. They can't hurt you anymore." I closed my eyes, the weight lifting from my chest. "Thank you," I whispered, "for believing me." He paused. "I didn't have to believe you, Margaret. You believed yourself, and that made all the difference." I sat on the motel balcony that night. The ocean spread out before me like a promise. Lightning flickered far away, tracing silver veins across the sky. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel afraid of the storm, because I had become it. And as the rain began to fall, I whispered to the night, not in anger, not in grief, but in peace. Robert, it's done. Justice came home. When the sun rose the next morning, it didn't feel like any other sunrise. The light was softer, almost forgiving. For the first time in years, I didn't wake to anxiety clawing at my chest. I woke to silence and peace. My phone buzzed just as I poured my first cup of coffee. It was Graham. "Margaret," he said, "it's over. The police executed the warrants at dawn. Daniel and Rebecca are in custody." The words landed slowly, like pebbles sinking into still water. "They confessed," he continued. "The forgeries, the attempted guardianship, everything. The FBI confirmed the recordings from Paul Hayes. It's airtight." I sat down at the small motel table, staring at the steam rising from my cup. I thought I'd feel triumphant, but all I felt was quiet. Victory, I realized, doesn't always roar. Sometimes it exhales. A few hours later, Elena Vega stopped by the motel. She wore the same dark sunglasses, but this time her posture was softer. "Congratulations," she said. "You made it." "Did I?" I asked. "Because right now I just feel tired." She smiled faintly. "That's what survival feels like. It's not fireworks. It's breathing without fear." She handed me a small flash drive. "All the evidence is backed up here. Keep it somewhere safe. You earned it." When she left, I stared at the tiny piece of plastic resting in my palm. So small, yet it held months of betrayal, proof, and redemption. It was strange how something that once destroyed you could also save you. That afternoon, Graham picked me up. He said the police wanted my formal statement and that I'd have to identify the documents they'd seized. When we pulled into the Sarasota County Police Department, a chill ran through me. Inside, everything smelled like bleach and authority. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. An officer guided me to a small interview room. On the table were boxes labeled Collins Case Evidence. I signed where they told me to sign, verified every recording, every forgery, every bank statement. Each paper felt like a ghost of what had been stolen, not just money, but trust. As I finished, an officer looked up and said gently, "Ma'am, you were very brave. Not everyone makes it out of situations like this." Brave. That word didn't feel like mine. I wasn't brave. I was desperate. But maybe desperation, when guided by truth, becomes something like courage. When I stepped outside, the sky was turning gold over the bay. Seagulls wheeled above the water, calling out like witnesses to the end of a storm. Graham turned to me. "Do you want to see them?" "Who?" "Daniel and Rebecca. They're being processed in the holding area. I can arrange it if you'd like." I hesitated. Part of me wanted to look them in the eyes. Another part just wanted to forget they ever existed. But closure is a strange thing. It asks for courage one last time. "Okay," I said, "just for a moment." They brought me into a narrow hallway separated by glass panels. Beyond the glass, Daniel sat hunched over a metal table, Rebecca beside him, eyes red, face hollow. He looked up and saw me. For a heartbeat, neither of us spoke. Then he whispered, "Mom, please." It wasn't the voice of the man who'd plotted against me. It was the voice of a little boy who once scraped his knee and cried for comfort. And in that instant, I felt something shift. Not forgiveness, but the release of carrying too much hate. "I loved you, Daniel," I said quietly through the glass. "I gave you everything I had. But love doesn't mean letting people destroy you." Rebecca broke down, sobbing. "Margaret, we just wanted security." Then you should have built it, I said, not stolen it. The guard gestured that time was up. As I turned to leave, Daniel's voice echoed behind me. Mom, please don't hate us. I stopped at the door. Hate is a luxury, I said softly, and I've wasted enough of my life on people who don't deserve it. Then I walked away. That night, back at the motel, I finally slept deeply, dreamless and undisturbed. When I woke, the air smelled like salt and new beginnings. I called Graham. What happens now? Now, he said. Now you live. Simple words, but they carried more weight than any verdict. A week later, I returned to my home. The police had already cleared it. The air was stale, the room still echoing with the ghost of voices that once plotted my ruin. But the hibiscus in the garden was blooming, bright red, defiant, alive. I stood there for a long time, feeling the wind on my face. Then I whispered, "We made it, Robert." 6. Truth. That evening, as the sun melted into the gulf, there was a knock on my door. When I opened it, Lily stood there, my granddaughter. Her eyes were swollen, her voice trembling. "Grandma, can I come in?" I nodded, wordless. She stepped inside, her hands shaking. "I didn't know they'd gone that far," she said through tears. "I thought it was just about money. I didn't think they'd hurt you." I studied her face, the guilt, the youth, the flicker of something still pure. "I don't know if I can forgive you yet," I said honestly, "but I don't want to lose you either." She sobbed harder. "I'll do whatever it takes to make things right." "Then start by telling the truth," I said, "about everything." She nodded, whispering, "I will." When she left, I stood at the doorway watching her disappear into the orange light, and for the first time, I believed redemption was possible. That night, I sat on the porch, a cup of tea warming my hands. The ocean murmured softly in the distance. And I realized something. The real victory wasn't in seeing them punished. It was in reclaiming myself. Piece by piece, truth by truth. Because justice isn't loud. It's quiet. It's the sound of an old woman sipping tea in her own home, unafraid of the dark. And as the stars blinked awake above the Florida coast, I whispered, "Peace has a sound." And tonight, I can finally hear it. Hello. A week after everything ended, my home no longer felt haunted. It felt hollow, but free. The kind of silence that follows a long storm, not empty, just waiting to be filled with something better. I spent my mornings tending the hibiscus, watching the sunlight trip through its petals like honey. Neighbors would wave from across the street, hesitant, curious. They had heard the rumors, the police cars, the arrests, the headlines, but no one dared to ask. Until one afternoon, as I was trimming the garden, a woman I barely knew stopped by the gate. Her name was Clara, mid-50s, kind eyes, trembling voice. "I saw the news, Margaret," she said softly. "What your family did. It's terrible. I'm so sorry." "Thank you," I replied. "It's over now." She hesitated, then added, "You're brave. Most of us would have stayed quiet." That word again, brave, it lingered like an echo. I wasn't brave. I was just tired of pretending everything was fine. But when she walked away, something in me stirred. If people were listening, maybe it was time to speak. That night I sat in my living room with a cup of chamomile tea. The air smelled like lemon polish and peace. On the table was the flash drive Elena had given me. The recordings. The files. The truth. For days I had avoided it. Part of me wanted to lock it away forever like Robert's old letter. But another part, the part that had survived, whispered, "The truth only heals when it's shared." I turned on my old laptop. The screen flickered to life, casting pale light across the room. I opened my email, read the dozens of messages from journalists, lawyers, social workers, all asking the same question. Would you be willing to tell your story? My hands trembled slightly on the keyboard. Then, without overthinking, I opened a blank document and began to type. My name is Margaret Collins. I am 71 years old. A few months ago, I discovered my own family planned to have me declared incompetent so they could steal everything I owned. But this isn't a story about money. It's a story about silence and the price we pay when we let it grow too long. The words came easier than I expected, sharp, clean, like air after thunder. Each sentence peeled away another layer of fear I hadn't realized was still there. When I finished, I uploaded the story to a public blog. I didn't expect anyone to read it. It was just my truth, left out in the open, like a letter in a bottle cast into the sea. But within hours, the world answered. By morning, my email was flooded. Hundreds of messages from strangers. Sons, daughters, grandparents, caregivers. My father's going through the same thing. My sister forged my mom's medical papers too. Thank you for speaking. You gave me courage. Each story was a mirror, reflecting the same pain, the same betrayal, the same fear of not being believed. And somewhere between the lines, I realized I wasn't alone. None of us were. That day, a local journalist came to my door. Samantha Ruiz from the Sarasota Herald. She was young, but her eyes carried the kind of empathy you can't fake. Mrs. Collins, she said gently, your story is spreading fast. People are calling it the Florida case. Would you be open to a short interview? I hesitated. Cameras had always made me uneasy. But if my silence had nearly killed me once, maybe my voice could save someone else now. All right, I said, but we do it my way. We sat on the porch at sunset, just two women, one recorder, and the ocean humming softly in the distance. She asked, "What made you decide to speak publicly?" I looked toward the horizon where the sky was painted with gold and sorrow. I didn't decide, I said. The truth did. It kept knocking until I opened the door. Her pen stilled for a moment. Do you forgive them? Forgiveness. The hardest word in any language. I thought about Daniel's face behind the glass, Rebecca's tears, Lily's apology. I don't know if forgiveness is a door I'll ever walk through, I said softly. But I've stopped standing outside it. Samantha's eyes glistened. And what do you want people to learn from your story? I took a long breath. That love without boundaries isn't love, it's surrender. That silence is the accomplice of cruelty, and that no one, no matter their age, should ever feel powerless in their own home. She smiled, quiet and reverent. That's going to stay with people. As two. The article came out 2 days later. The woman who outsmarted her family and exposed the hidden epidemic. By the end of the week, it had gone viral. Radio shows called, news anchors quoted my words, and senior centers across the state began holding meetings titled, Know Your Rights. Graham called me one evening, laughing softly. Congratulations, Margaret. You've started a movement. I smiled into the phone. No, Graham, I just told the truth. The movement was already waiting. That night I sat by the window again, watching the ocean glow silver under the moon. It looked endless, like a reflection of every story yet to be told. I thought of Robert, of how he used to say, even the smallest candle pushes back the dark. Maybe I had become that candle, flickering, imperfect, but alive. And maybe that was enough. I opened my notebook, the one filled with evidence, plans, pain, and turned to a clean page. At the top, I wrote, New chapter. The foundation for elder protection. Because survival wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of someone else's hope. I put down my pen, smiled faintly, and whispered to the sea beyond my window. Robert, can you hear that? The truth finally found its voice. The first letter arrived on a Tuesday. The envelope was handwritten, the ink slightly smudged as if the writer's hands had trembled. It was from a woman in Ohio. Mrs. Collins, it read, I saw your story online. My son has been trying to take control of my finances. I thought I was alone, but you gave me courage to fight back. Thank you for reminding me that my voice still matters. I sat with that letter for a long time, tracing the ink with my fingers. It felt heavier than paper. It felt like a pulse, proof that the truth had found its way into another heart. Then, more letters came. From Texas, from Maine, from people I had never met but somehow knew. Each one carried the same message in different handwriting. You made me brave. I finally told someone. Because of you, I left the house. It was like watching ripples spread across water, one story touching another until the whole surface shimmered with light. Within weeks, journalists began calling again. But this time, it wasn't just local news. Good Morning America, The Washington Post, CBS Evening News. They all wanted the same thing, my voice. For years, my family had tried to silence me. Now, the world was asking me to speak. I agreed, not out of pride, but purpose, because I realized something simple, yet powerful. Silence protects the wrong people. My first live interview was on a morning show filmed in Tampa. The studio lights were bright, but I wasn't nervous. I had already survived the darkest kind of spotlight, the kind that comes from betrayal. The host smiled at me warmly. Mrs. Collins, what made you decide to tell your story publicly? I paused, then said, because truth grows mold in the dark, and if we don't air it out, it infects everything we love. The host blinked, surprised, then smiled. That's powerful. It's simple, I said. I'm 71 years old. I don't have time for lies anymore. The audience laughed softly, but I saw something else in their eyes. Recognition. The kind that says, I've been there too, even if I never said it out loud. After the show aired, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Calls from advocacy groups, nonprofits, even the governor's office. They wanted to collaborate, to launch awareness campaigns for elder protection, to train caregivers. But one call changed everything. It came from the Silver Haven Foundation, a national organization fighting elder abuse. The director, a woman named Joanne Miller, said, Mrs. Collins, your story has already done more for our cause than 10 years of lobbying. We'd like to offer you an honorary position as our public ambassador. I laughed softly. Ambassador? I'm just a grandmother with a stubborn sense of justice. Joanne chuckled. Exactly. That's what makes you perfect. 2 months later, I found myself standing on a stage in Washington, D.C. 1,000 faces looked back at me. Lawyers, nurses, social workers, survivors. The air smelled of coffee and conviction. As the lights dimmed, I took a breath and began. When my story first spread, people called me brave. But bravery isn't what saved me. Awareness did. I survived because one doctor had the courage to slip me a note, because one lawyer believed me, because one detective watched when everyone else looked away, and because I finally decided that fear had taken enough of my life. The room was silent, the kind of silence that listens. I'm not here because I won, I continued. I'm here because I refused to lose quietly. A tear rolled down someone's cheek in the front row, then another, and then applause. Long, rising, human. After the conference, a man in his late 60s approached me. He wore a worn jacket and held his hat nervously. Mrs. Collins, he said, I haven't spoken to my daughter in 3 years. She tried to put me away in a home, but after hearing you, I think I'll try again. Not to forgive her, but to forgive myself. I squeezed his hand. That's where healing starts, I said. He smiled. You remind me of my late wife. She always said, storms make better sailors. I smiled back. Then maybe we're all just learning how to steer. When I returned home to Florida, the letters hadn't stopped. There were more now, hundreds, some written in shaky penmanship, some typed in bold fonts, others just short notes on scraps of paper. You saved me. You made me tell the truth. You gave me back my life. Every letter went into a wooden box Robert had built decades ago, the same box that once held his secret folder. It felt poetic, like the past and present shaking hands at last. One evening, I was invited to speak at a local university. The students were young, curious, full of questions about justice and empathy. After my talk, one girl, no older than Lily, raised her hand. Mrs. Collins, she asked, how did you find the strength to forgive? I thought about it for a long moment. Then I said, forgiveness isn't a door you open for others. It's a window you open for yourself, to let the light back in. The room went still, and for the first time, I saw my story reflected not in pity, but in hope. That night, back home, I sat by the window again. The moon hung low over the Gulf, painting silver trails across the water. I opened one last letter that had arrived that morning. It was unsigned. The handwriting was familiar, careful, hesitant. Grandma, I watched your interview. I cried the whole time. You were right. Silence protects the wrong people. I want to make things right, not for forgiveness, but for truth. Love, Lily. I pressed the letter to my chest, tears spilling freely for the first time in months. The girl who once betrayed me was now finding her own voice. Maybe that was what healing looked like. Not perfection, but honesty. I closed my eyes and whispered to the waves outside. The ripple reached her, Robert. It reached her too. It was late afternoon when I saw her again. The air was heavy with the scent of rain and jasmine, that Florida kind of humidity that makes every emotion feel a little louder. I was sitting on the porch, a cup of tea cooling between my palms when a familiar car pulled into the driveway. The door opened slowly, like hesitation taking physical form. And there she was, Lily. No makeup, hair tied back, eyes red but steady. For a moment I couldn't move. It was as if time folded back on itself. The child I'd once cradled, the teenager who turned away, and the young woman now standing before me were all the same person, layered by regret. She walked toward me, every step trembling with unspoken words. Grandma, she whispered. Her voice cracked on the second syllable. I didn't answer. I just looked at her, not as the girl who betrayed me, but as the girl who still carried my blood, my history, my hope. Can I sit? She asked softly. I nodded. The chair beside me creaked as she sat down. The air between us was thick, not hostile, just fragile, like porcelain that had once been shattered but glued back together. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. We just listened to the wind, the faint rustle of the hibiscus leaves, and the ocean breathing beyond the dunes. Finally, Lily broke the silence. I don't expect forgiveness, she said. I just needed you to know that I've been trying to make things right. I turned toward her, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. How, Lily? She took a deep breath. I gave my testimony in court against Mom and Dad. I told the truth, everything. I even gave the text, the recordings I had. The prosecutor said it helped solidify the case. Her voice trembled. They hate me now, both of them. But I don't care anymore. I couldn't keep living with the lie. Tears stung my eyes, though I didn't let them fall. Why now? I asked quietly. Why not sooner? She looked down, because I was scared. They said if I ever spoke out, they'd blame everything on me. And for a long time, I believed them. But when I saw your interview, when I heard you say that silence protects the wrong people, it hit me. I'd been protecting the wrong ones all along. Her words broke something open inside me. Not anger, not pity, but recognition. Because I knew what it felt like to live inside silence. We sat there as the sun dipped lower, the sky melting into streaks of amber and rose. "Grandma," she whispered, "I lost everything. My parents, my friends, my college scholarship. I don't know where to go." "You still have me," I said softly. Her eyes widened, tears spilling over now. "After everything I did?" "Yes," I said, "because that's what redemption is. Not forgetting what was done, but choosing what comes next." She covered her face with her hands, sobbing quietly. I let her cry. Sometimes silence heals more than words. When she finally looked up again, her face was streaked with salt and sincerity. "I want to work," she said. "I want to study social work, help people like you, people who can't speak up. I want to do something good, Grandma." For the first time in months, I smiled, a real one. "Then you already are." That night, we made dinner together. Simple things. Soup, bread, a salad from the garden. It wasn't about the food, it was about the rhythm. Chopping, stirring, tasting. The old dance of shared space. At one point, Lily held up a bowl of soup and said quietly, "I used to think love meant never saying no. But I get it now. You said no. And that's what saved both of us." I looked at her, the light from the kitchen window painting gold along her face. "Boundaries are love, Lily," I said. "They're just love that's learned how to protect itself." She nodded, her eyes shining with new understanding. After dinner, we sat outside again. The storm that had threatened earlier never came. Instead, the sky was full of stars, the kind that only appear after everything has been washed clean. "Grandma," Lily said softly, "do you ever miss them?" I thought for a moment. "Sometimes," I admitted. "But I've learned to miss the memory, not the people. The version of them I hoped existed." She nodded slowly. "I think I understand." "Good," I said, "because understanding is the first step toward peace." We sat in silence again, but it wasn't heavy anymore. It was warm, like the quiet that follows forgiveness, or the pause between two verses of a song. Before going to bed, Lily hugged me. Tentative at first, then tighter, longer. "I love you, Grandma," she whispered. "I know," I said, resting my hand on her hair. "I've always known." She pulled back, eyes glistening. "I don't deserve you." "No one deserves love, Lily," I said gently. "That's why it's powerful. It's given, not earned." That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed listening to the sound of the ocean, steady and endless. And I realized, maybe healing doesn't happen all at once. Maybe it arrives like the tide, slow, patient, touching the same shore again and again until it feels safe. Through the open window, I could hear Lily breathing softly in the guest room, the same room where she used to sleep as a child. The air was filled with jasmine again, with life, with something that almost felt like hope. I smiled in the dark and whispered to myself, the storm didn't destroy us. It just changed the shape of the shore. Morning sunlight spilled through the kitchen window like forgiveness. It touched the old wooden table, the chipped teacup, the soft lines of Lily's handwriting scattered across new grant papers. Our names were side by side on the letterhead, the Collins Foundation for Elder Justice. If someone had told me a year ago that I'd be here, alive, free, rebuilding my life with the very girl who once betrayed me, I might have laughed, or cried, or both. But life, I've learned, doesn't ask for permission before beginning again. Lily was sitting at the table, laptop open, eyes bright with purpose. "Grandma?" she said, smiling. We just got our first official donation. $2,000 from a community center in Georgia. I laughed softly, a sound that felt strange and new in my own mouth. That's wonderful, I said. It means someone out there believes in what we're doing. She nodded. They said they saw your interview on YouTube. Apparently you've become a bit of a legend. I raised an eyebrow. A legend, huh? I still forget my car keys every other morning. We both laughed. Real laughter this time, the kind that comes from somewhere healed. Our days settled into a rhythm. Mornings spent reviewing applications from families seeking help. Afternoons filled with calls to local shelters, attorneys, counselors. Evenings walking along the beach, talking about everything and nothing. Sometimes Lily would stop and pick up seashells, handing me the ones shaped like hearts. Proof the ocean loves you, she'd say. And sometimes when I'd look at her, really look, I'd see the woman she was becoming. Brave, grounded, luminous. It felt like watching sunlight reclaim a house that had been dark for far too long. One afternoon, we held our first support meeting at the community library. 15 people showed up, strangers who'd found my story online and decided to share their own. They came with trembling voices, stacks of documents, and hearts too heavy for one lifetime. I listened as they spoke. Of stolen inheritances, false guardianships, emotional blackmail. And then I told them something I wish someone had told me long ago. You are not crazy. You are not weak. And your story does not end where someone else tried to silence it. For a moment, the room was quiet. Then a woman in her 60s began to cry softly. Another reached out, took her hand. That's when I realized healing isn't just individual. It's contagious. Later that evening, as we packed up the chairs, Lily turned to me. You know, she said, I think Grandpa would be proud of you. I smiled, feeling the truth of it in my bones. Maybe, I said, but I think he'd be prouder of us. Outside, the sky was soaked in gold. That late Florida light that makes everything look softer, kinder. Months passed. The foundation grew faster than we imagined. We partnered with hospitals, senior centers, even local police departments. The story that once broke me had become a bridge, connecting thousands. Every so often, letters still arrived, from people who found strength in the sound of my voice, or courage in the echo of my words. And I kept every one of them, stacked neatly beside Robert's old box, like a garden of gratitude blooming in paper form. One morning, as I stood by the shoreline, Lily joined me, barefoot, smiling. She held a small glass jar in her hand. What's that? I asked. Salt and water, she said. I read about it in one of your feng shui books. You said it absorbs stagnant energy. I chuckled. It does. She walked closer to the water, knelt, and poured the mixture into the sea. For the past, she whispered, for everything we need to let go. The tide swallowed it gently, like forgiveness itself. We stood there in silence, the waves washing our feet, the horizon shimmering like a promise. Grandma, she said finally, do you ever get scared it'll happen again? That someone else will try to hurt you? I looked out over the endless blue. Fear never really leaves, I said. It just learns its place. The difference is, now I know mine. She nodded, her expression thoughtful. That night I couldn't sleep. I went to the porch wrapped in my shawl, listening to the rhythm of the crickets and the soft hush of waves. The house felt alive again, filled not with ghosts but with laughter, work, life. And as I sat there, I realized something. Survival isn't just about escaping the storm. It's about learning how to dance when it rains. I opened my notebook one last time, the same one that had once held my fear, my plans, my pain. On the final page, I wrote, "To anyone reading this, your story is not over. It's only waiting for the moment you decide to begin again." I closed the book, feeling the air shift around me, lighter, freer. The kind of peace that doesn't come from forgetting, but from finally remembering who you are. As the first light of dawn touched the ocean, Lily joined me again, still half asleep, her hair messy and beautiful. "Couldn't sleep either?" she asked. "Just thinking," I said. She smiled, resting her head on my shoulder. "What about?" "About how lucky we are," I said. "About how endings are really just disguised beginnings." We sat there together, watching the sun rise, golden, relentless, magnificent. The same sun that had witnessed everything we'd lost and everything we'd found again. And as the light spread across the waves, I whispered, "This is it, Robert. The storm is over. The house is warm again. And we are home." If you were in my place, would you have forgiven them? Would you have let Lily back into your life or closed that door forever? Tell me what you think in the comments below, because sometimes healing doesn't come from answers. It comes from sharing the questions. Leave your thoughts. I read every single one of them. If this story touched your heart, click like so more people can find it. Subscribe if you believe that even after the darkest storms, light always returns. And remember, every ending hides the seed of a new beginning. Maybe this one is yours.